Okay, one more time. Please welcome Paul Dano. Paul, welcome to Mill Valley Film Festival.
Thank you.
Yay, so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Let me give you this.
Did I miss an introduction? Did you say something nice?
I said, yeah,
Okay.
I tried to.
All right,
Yeah.
good. Okay, cool. Beautiful theater. Nice. Zoe, thank you for having us. Really happy, lucky to be passing through Mill Valley and San Francisco as a part of work. Really fun day or two here, so thanks. Just can't wait to share this film with you guys. It's kind of, we're about to release it in a couple weeks. It's been a long road, a lot of struggle, a lot of fun. And it's just so important for a film like this to have a festival like Mill Valley and communities that come together and still like to come to the theater and share something together and watch a movie. So just thank you for being here, and we'll say more and chat and hang out after. Thanks. Oh yes, do you want me to do it now or after?
Yeah, I think it might be good, yeah.
Okay, and so Carey Mulligan was supposed to be here. She got sick on her way here. She actually had to deboard the plane. She's doing okay. She's fine today, but she is really sorry she can't be here, and you're stuck with just me.
So tonight's screening is in honor of Paul Dano's work and Carey Mulligan's work. It's a part of our Spotlight program, and I would like to invite Dane Callahan, the Deputy Director of the California Film Institute, to present the Mill Valley Film Festival Award to Paul. Dane.
What a great film for the second day of the Mill Valley Film Festival. I'm pleased to be here today to present the Mill Valley Film Festival Award to Paul Dano. Paul, I'd like to invite you back up to the stage. As part of this Spotlight presentation, we are presenting the Mill Valley Film Festival Award. This is in recognition of really your amazing work in your debut role as director of this film, and also to acknowledge the collaboration with your cast and your creative team that was required to make a film with this type of emotional intensity and really visual intensity. And so we want to honor and recognize that with the Mill Valley Film Festival Award. We are really pleased to have you here in Mill Valley with us today and to recognize this really moving film. Thank you. You bet. And now, yes.
Great. So that's actually
Dane, thank you.
what Dane said is a great way to start, because a lot of Hollywood award sort of things, you really just try to think quickly where your bread is buttered, which means like where the money comes from. But bringing up the collaboration is such an important place to start, because it takes a village to make a film, and it's I've been acting for a long time, and I feel so happy that my eyes have been refreshed about how hard everybody works to make a film happen. And so I would also just, continue to share this with the crew and my collaborators. The best part of directing was it felt like what being a parent might feel like. You're there to get the best out of everybody. So thank you for thanking everybody as well, and that's a great place to start.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And let's take a seat and let's talk more about the film.
Okay.
That's great. Louder?
Oh, sorry.
Are we okay? Is that all right? Can you hear us? That must be no. So thinking about collaboration, I mean, one of the things that I think is really great in this film, and it's something that I almost feel like this is like a trend in what we're seeing, is that Carey's character is messy. You know, I mean, like, it was kind of wonderful to me. It's like, the Best Actress Award last year went to another messy character, and that we're getting to the point where we're able to see female characters that are not sort of, circumscribed, and they're having to be, reactive as opposed to active. So, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first. I've known Carey Mulligan for a long time. Her and Zoe Kazan, who wrote the script with me, they did a play together about 10 years ago. They shared a dressing room. We all became friends. And as we were writing about this, we thought of Carey, and I thought she's such a wonderful actor, but I thought, gosh, it would be so fun to see Carey get to be messy. And I feel like there's probably some material there for her to have some fun with and to let out. And she felt the same way. I felt this creatively. She felt the same way, partially because I think she feels like, as a woman, that she hasn't often been allowed the opportunity to be sort of messy or flawed. There's an expectation to be perfect, to be beautiful.
Yeah.
There's a double standard. When a man misbehaves in a certain way, it can be lionized,
Yes,
almost.
indeed.
And if a woman doesn't, it's reprehensible action. And the hope was that we were approaching these characters with, even though they both fuck up in a big way.
They do, yeah.
They do, but hopefully we approached it with just enough compassion where it's not about condemning this woman or this husband.
Yeah, it doesn't feel judgmental at all. I mean, it feels more that you see people who are evolving as human beings and are coming into their own sense of self. Each of them really is in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to explode to find a sense of self, but I do think it's a coming-of-age story for a family, for a mother, father, and son, not just for the kid. And I feel like that's something that's always interested me in the American dream, which is that we're always told that, like, out there it's better, and at a certain point you're like, wait, but I'm here. And here is not always what we're comfortable with, and I think for the father character, he runs, and when that contract is broken, when the rug is kind of pulled out from Jeanette, I think there's a crisis of identity of some kind. I think it's mysterious and complicated, and I don't want to be reductive about it, but I think that there were probably parts of her that, being married at a young age, having a kid at a young age, and being a woman in 1960, parts of her that she never got to experience or live.
Yeah. Well, the 1960 thing as well. I mean, the thing about this is essentially it's a period piece, and I wonder if there's almost a sense of safety in looking at these characters who are going through these things because you have it at the distance of time. I mean, really, there's a universality. I mean, it's very current in many, many ways. But do you think being able to examine it from, this amount of time is a way, it gives it more of a safety in a way?
Well, that's super, that's interesting. And I don't know if I thought of it in those terms, but I totally know what you're saying. I do think that it sometimes helps to enter a different world,
right?
For your own world to be reflected through another world.
Yeah.
For me, the period we questioned constantly why the period, because it was like, well, you could make it for X amount of dollars less if it wasn't period. So we were constantly like, well, does it need to be period? And yes, it does. Right. And we felt it did for the Jeanette character. It surprisingly feels less necessary this moment than it did when we started writing it 5 years ago. But And I also, for me, the period, one of the fun things about making a film is that you're making a world and you're making an image. And so the period not only maybe has a sense of nostalgia or myth or memory to it, but as a director, you get to really create the aesthetic that your audience is stepping into. So
Yeah.
you get to control the frame and the colors and the textures.
Right.
And I can't just point the camera at you because the door behind you isn't right. And that kind of is, I've now realized, is like a weapon to my producers to be like, well, no, I have to do it. You know, we have to change it. So that was great.
Yeah. So, so as a director, you know, going into this as your first directing piece, you've got within this kind of, I mean, it's kind of a wise choice of a story because, you know, a lot of it is sort of circumscribed within the context of the family with certain interiors and exteriors, but you've also got the fires. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, there's an expansiveness to what you're having to do just from the technical perspective. I mean, how was that? Can you talk a little bit about what that was like for you as a first-time director?
Yeah. I mean, making your first film is like, a lot of it is like learning how to compromise and learning when to put your foot down. And there's so many times where I said it has to be done a certain way, and then you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
And
Can you give us an example of one of those?
Well, we got to film 4 days in Montana, where the story takes place.
Yep.
And the rest of it we filmed in Oklahoma. Oklahoma was wonderful to us, and we found a great place. But that was a hard, you know, that was.
Were the stakes were higher in Montana?
There was no tax credit. There was no. It was too expensive.
Right.
But it's so the spirit of that place, the feeling not just that you're on the edge of the world, but I love when you feel small against that backdrop, and because the home is so hermetic. But the home is the world for this kid. You know, they've moved to a new town, and I'd moved to a new town when I was 14, and all you have is your family. You know, so to have that backdrop is essential. So to, you know, just location alone is and somehow the magic of making a film 4 days is enough. And I think it's the place is in the fabric of the film, and it works. The fire too. The fire. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I said, because it was always designed as it was going to be one shot. Yeah, I mean, you're going to see the smoke on the horizon maybe, but the actual fire was always going to be one shot. That's all.
Did you actually create a fire?
No, I mean, but we were supposed to.
I know. You know, when I first saw this, it was like not long after the Napa fires here, and it was like, you know, it's like that gets into your bones.
Well, so maybe here is the right place to say that we didn't do a real fire.
Oh, good. That's I'm glad to hear that.
Because we spent a lot of time looking for a private property to do a controlled burn.
Yeah.
But, you know, the kid could only be on camera 5.5 hours a day, and he's in almost every scene. And if we chose to do a real practical burn, if that day happened to be windy and we lost those hours, I wasn't going to get them back. I was not in a position to, you know, tell somebody to spend more money, and it was not that kind of film, and you just had to choose to not do a real fire, and it I think it works, and you know, but those are hard decisions to make.
Yeah. And of course, those are very practical things. You know, I mean, there's a lot of practicality in directing, but you've worked with some really interesting directors. I mean, Steve McQueen for one. You know, there's some interesting people in your acting life. Was there anything that you learned from one or more of the directors that you've worked with that you felt was a great creative entree into how you wanted to work on your first film?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, I was so happy that I've been on so many different sets and seen so many different actors work and seen so many crews, and I've always appreciated as an actor when the crew is in tune with the film. And I feel like that happens naturally with certain filmmakers. So with somebody like Steve McQueen, or you step on Paul Thomas Anderson's set, or whoever, people want to be there. And as an actor, I think you feel that. You know, I feel like the temperature of the set is different with certain people. And so knowing that I could try to create my own set, and that, you know, want to bring the crew into it in a certain way, and so when the actors come, that we're really there for them. Just knowing that that was an option, you know. Sometimes so many things are about just knowing that you can do them, you know, and you need to. And so I don't know how people do it who haven't had experience on set,
Right.
but I have felt the difference, and that's something that I felt was important.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things I find kind of fascinating because, you know, I mean, people go to university, they study film, you know, some people study directing, but quite often they're being taught by people who haven't actually directed a lot. So one of the few people who get to really see directors are actors, you know, and to be really on the receiving end of what they're doing creatively. So it's, I don't know, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of, not many people get that kind of insight into what that work can be.
Yeah, that's true, and I think I've been, you know, super lucky.
Yeah.
But I think that's also actually, I've wanted to make a film for a long time, and I think it's informed who I am as an actor, and who I'm, you know, what kind of films I want to be a part of. I think that my desire to direct has gone into my acting in some way, just in terms of the collaborators that I like to work with, if I'm so lucky to do so. Yeah.
So going back to the collaboration on this, I mean, this is taken from a book, and you initiated this. So one of your key collaborators is also your life partner, Zoe Kazan. And Carey, you've known for a long time. So what are the benefits of working with people that you're really close with, if any?
Yeah, so, you know.
Or does that create challenges for you?
Sure, it does, yeah. I mean, I wrote a first draft of Wildlife, and I secretly thought it was really kind of good. And I gave it to Zoe to read, and she just tore it apart. And it was my first time writing, and I mean, it was like, she was, you know, she was like, it's good. And I was like, okay, oh my God. And
it was good, ...
Yeah, yeah. So, and frankly, I think to avoid the fight that was about to happen, she was like, why don't you just let me do a pass? Let me show you what I mean on certain things. And she'll say her version of the story is different, and that's okay. It wasn't in screenplay format. Like, she has a lot of things that she felt like, and it doesn't need to be in screenplay format for it to be a screenplay. We fought, you know, so, and then we just traded it back and forth. So we would talk for hours about it, maybe, and interrogate it, and blah, blah, blah. And then one of us would take it. And that was a really healthy way to work.
Right.
And a really fruitful way to work. Acting together is harder because you're on set 14 hours a day together, and you have to go home together, and you know, that's a lot. So writing was quite nice. Working with Carey and Jake, who I had known as well, and worked with, I don't know, for me, I felt like it was an advantage as a director to know a piece of their real self too. And I don't know what's in there for them, and that's their job, you know, but something about that felt good to me, that I know Carey, you know, and I know that she's a good mother. I know that she works hard. I kind of know what she cares about. And I don't know, I don't manipulate that or anything, and I don't take any credit for it. It feels good to kind of know the human being and then see her depart into the character. Yeah. As an actor, personally, I feel like it's harder to work with people, you know, because it's just like the truth barometer is even higher. Yeah, yeah.
So let's open to questions from the audience. And do we have mic runners in here or not? That sounds like a no. Okay, there's a question here, yeah. So the question is about the son and how you found him and how you came to work with him.
Yes, we had a casting director named Laura Rosenthal in New York. She's wonderful. She was actually a really important sort of force behind the film for me. We saw a lot of kids, and really towards the end of the process, we got a tape from a kid named Ed Oxenbould in Australia. and he's got a good name.
It's a great name.
But the idea, I mean, casting an Australian kid in this like super American film, and I didn't even know we could get a tape for, you know, from Australia, and that was so great. And his tape was, it was the first time Zoe and I saw the scenes the way we sort of might have imagined them, meaning like Ed was able to fill in the space between the lines as well. Like he had thoughts, and you could tell that he was interpreting something, not just being his natural self in a way. And it was really exciting. It was still scary to cast him because the film, and even the filmmaking, is reliant on the actors to a certain extent, you know. So the fact that I didn't have to cut around a kid's performance, I mean, I'm so thankful we found Ed. I really think he's a really wonderful actor. He was so great with Carey and Jake, right there with them every step of the way. I was so worried. I was acting at that age, and I really wanted Ed to feel like on our level, like Carey and Jake. I mean, I was trying to be vulnerable with him and say, here, you know, and really make an open dialogue. You could say anything you want. You could don't worry about fucking up. You know, there's nothing we can do that's wrong. We're in this together. And I said, Carey, how do you feel about your accent? You know, she's English. She was like, I'm really nervous about it, my American accent. She said, blah, blah, blah. And she was, you know, she really was. And I said, and I was like, in my head, I was like, this is perfect. We can set up Ed to like say, like let him talk about if he's worried about it. And I said, Ed, how do you feel about your accent? He was like, I think I'm good. And he said, I think I'm going to start talking in it 24/7 soon, and you know, I feel good about it. And Carey and I were just like, oh my God. So he's great.
It's great. Okay, let's take another question. I can't see you very well, so yes, thank you.
I understood Bill Camp is in the film too, who's with you in Love and Mercy, playing the father. He's amazing too. He takes on these roles that are not exactly sympathetic, but he does a great job of it.
So the question is about Bill Camp and his work, and that you'd worked with him in Love and Mercy.
Yeah, Bill
yeah.
Camp's a wonderful actor. I've worked with him before. I bump into him on the street in New York. He's a great guy. And that character of Warren Miller felt really yummy in terms of like, I just sort of had delight in how confused this kid could be by like this person who's like maybe trying to seduce his mom, but is also being kind of kind to them. Maybe he's offering his dad a job, or like even imparting wisdom. And just, you know, Bill, I think, found all the nuance and was able to kind of walk that line of, and just even the timbre of his voice. He's got a very sexy voice, you know.
And that cigar that he's constantly smoking too.
And that cigar that he's constantly smoking.
He
was
went
a
to town on that cigar. That was, and I would actually be curious to ask him how much he rehearsed with that cigar or not, if that's just natural sort of, you know, joie de vivre with the cigar, because that was impressive.
That's great. Yes.
This being your first film as director, I spent some of today reading reviews of A Star Is Born, which is Bradley Cooper's first movie as director, and basically over and over people kept saying, wow, it's kind of not bad. It's better than we would have expected. So as an actor that people know, and now this is your first film as director, are the stakes higher or lower, or how are they different when you're going from being an actor to a director?
So the question is whether the stakes are higher or lower when you're going from acting into directing, and the comparison was with some of the reviews this gentleman had been reading of about A Star Is Born and Bradley Cooper.
So I don't know how the stakes could be higher making your first film for anybody. I mean, you've put so much work into it, and it's terrifying, and it's like the best thing ever. So I don't really know any other way, and I don't know that it's certainly not. I don't think the stakes are any lower. I mean, as Zoe can attest, I was standing outside the theater doors here. You can hear people in the lobby, and I was, you know, like you can hear it in the theater, and I'm, you know, like you guys are trying to watch the film, and it's like, you know, you care about every experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
You talked a little bit about the perspective that was provided by the setting in Montana with the mountain backdrop and all that. What were your kind of criteria for that, and what was the place that you found?
Do you mean in Montana?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the question is about the location in Montana and how you found it.
Well, it stems from a book by Richard Ford called Wildlife, and it takes place in Great Falls, Montana, which we couldn't shoot in. It the sense of modernity is set in too much there, and we just couldn't like afford to make it look old. Essentially, we had to find a place that still had a certain, quality and the Northwest has always just felt like a spirit animal or something. I just find it so awe-inspiring and beautiful. So, and I think it's an essential part of the feeling of the story, of just sort of the idea of something on the horizon, something out there. I think that thing is somehow related for me, to like the mystery of who our parents are. I don't know, in some way that just felt like the relationship, and even the wind instruments, I don't know, that all kind of tied together somehow for me. And we shot in Paradise Valley in Livingston, and then we shot the rest of the film in Enid, Oklahoma.
Great. Questions in other parts of the theater that I can't see so well? Well, okay, yes.
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
Shall I try and capture?
Yeah, it's about the sort of silence in the film, the child's perspective, and kind of, did that come from the book, or how much was cut out? And I think being an actor previously, you think about dialogue a lot, so I think that was maybe part of the start of your question. So the book is all internal, like first person, and it's looking back on it. So, immediately one of the first things is, how do we make it present tense, imbue the feeling of memory, but not use voiceover? And the internal feelings, how do I make images or actions out of what I felt reading the book as a human being, and who am I in this, and why am I doing it? I would say that what you're talking about was there from day one, before anything was even written. That was part of the beauty of it to me, and I've always been somebody who is attracted to like the illusion of simplicity. I like it to seem simple, but hopefully it's actually complex, and sort of just the essence of things. So like right from the beginning, it was like, we're not going to move the camera unless we have to, let's just not assume we're going to cut, like just trying to kind of get it down to its sort of essence. And I think that's part of what I responded to in the book, is the language is sort of lean and spare, and for me that breathes poetry. And but it's in all facets of it too. You start writing it, and it's relying on the actors. As I was kind of saying before, I'm very lucky to have had these actors, because it allowed me to make the film the way that I saw it. Yeah.
We've got time for a couple more questions. There's one at the back there.
Hey, Paul. I'm just curious, how much coverage did you shoot that you didn't use? Did you hedge your bets, or did you really cover it as sparsely in the box office that you saw?
Can you just repeat that?
Yeah, sure.
So the question is about how much coverage you shot.
We sort of shot, no, it depends. I mean, a lot of things changed in the edit room. The film always kind of began like, let's just see the family in the frame, because they're going to break apart. So it's like sort of just like a basic idea of, let's just let it in the beginning and sort of have one kind of through line in the edit. So instead of a bunch of different scenes kind of then put together, like how can it have one sort of, the film, when I thought of the final scene and the final shot is when I finally optioned the book, because that was the point that I knew I could do it. So the whole thing is all for this one scene, and shot basically in a way. And then, as the family breaks apart, I think there are scenes that are exactly the way that I thought they would be and they were written, and there are scenes that are so different. There are scenes, for example, like the scene where Jerry returns home and then the bar scene after. Those are very long dialogue scenes. One of them's probably 5 minutes long, one of them's probably 3.5 minutes long. We shot a lot of different setups. Diego and I, my cinematographer, we really kind of broke it down, not like in a Hitchcockian way, but just sort of like, okay, this is why we would do a two-shot, this is why we would go over the shoulder, really trying to. And both of those scenes in the edit room ended up using the sort of portrait shot, and that's it, and we had all these other things that didn't get used, and that's just where the heart was in that moment. But it's a pretty fascinatingly liquid and inspiring process, things that happen on the day where suddenly you're adding a shot. The times where you lose a shot feels devastating, and you don't know if it's going to work, and then it does somehow. But we had to prep really well, too, for our budget and for the kids' hours, really. That was something that really I didn't know and constantly cursed in pre-production, because 5.5 hours on camera is just not a lot when he's in that many scenes. So we tried to be really sort of well prepared, and the economy of it, I think, was there for this story. Not practically, but for the characters.
We've got time for one last question. Oh my gosh, I'm going to let you choose, Paul.
Oh no.
Oh no. Okay, we've gone to this side less. I'm going to go over here.
I just want to say thank you also. I think that last scene that you just talked about was so beautiful that I think everyone can relate to it, right? No matter what's been done to us, and a lot was done to that kid, he was able to put it all aside, right, just to get that moment with him. And I'm curious, sort of on that, of all the things you could make a movie about, you landed on this.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. And so she said, short form version is, of all the things one could make a film about, I made a film about this, and basically why. I want to make a lot of different kinds of films. I hope my next film will be like super playful and like something totally different, because this is so sort of restrained and quiet, and that was probably a good reflection of who I am. But I think I've always known I'd probably make a film about family and start with family, and it's just close to my heart. And I think something that Richard Ford captured in his book that was one of the key jumping off points for me was how family is some of our greatest love, and because of that, it's why it's some of our greatest struggle and pain. So to have so much be hard for this kid, but still have there be some sense of love or compassion, or even though it's quite harsh, I don't know, something about that felt true to me, and it was just the right place to start.
That's great. So, Paul, I think Carey may have given you a message. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything about? No, I'll just read this message. So, okay.
Do you want to say something about something?
No, I started looking at this. I'm gonna have to skip some of this. You might have to read it. Okay. Firstly, I'm so very sorry not to be there with all of you. Mill Valley has such a dear place in my heart, and I've visited many times. Now I know this part will be weird because Paul's reading it, but here we go. This was the best experience I have had on a film, period. And then she says something nice. Yeah. And then she says something nice, which is very sweet.
Come on, read it.
I absolutely can't. And then Zoe was talking about this idea of mind the gap. And I think Carey had such a good time just because she was able to express her full self, which warts and all, which is important. Our humanity is not just what we want it to be. And so she, I think, feels like at this moment per time, talking about that and your feelings on it is particularly meaningful. And she hopes to be worthy of that. And she says, have a nice evening.
Paul, thank you so much. And tell your friends the film is going to be opening on October the 25th.
Here, yeah, 25th or 26th.
Was that right? 25th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
So yeah, thank you for being here
Yeah.
tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.